Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I can put this down. Okay, hide that. All right. So last when we meet Monday, last Monday we talked about OpenShift. We talked about creating node applications on OpenShift. Yes. We did a little bit of MongoDB. I think it was a little too much. Let's revisit all these topics again. Right. Let's start from scratch again. Let's go slow, and please stop me whenever I lose you. Right. It's better to get the questions out of the way in class. Right. If you need more, we can certainly meet afterwards. Remember that I'm here all day Wednesday, right, from the morning all the way up to here, up to 6 o'clock. So please come see me. Many of you have, but some of you have not yet. If you have questions, please come see me. Here also tomorrow after 5. I'm here on Monday as well, from 3 o'clock all the way to 6. Right? If you have questions, please come see me. All right, so let's start a brand new project from scratch. Let's see, GitHub 5610 fall mean, and let's go into lectures and let's create a small application, okay? And this is going to be our kind of like it's going to be my project, throughout the semester. Okay, I'm gonna be working on a project on my own, just like you're working on a project. I'll create my own project. Okay. I have something in mind. I think one of our students is working on something similar, but this is an idea that I have. I'll call it Service Maker. Service Maker. Okay. So in here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a boilerplate, a very simple Node server .js here, and I'm going to close all this. So server.js is where we're going to put our server, our Node server, right? We're gonna use Node and Express so to instantiate a server and listen in on a particular port. Yes, and then we can use it to host pages, to use as web services, to access the database from the client. Okay, so let's bring server.js here. Right now there's nothing. Right, we're going to here we could type any JavaScript and it will be executable on the desktop. Yes. Okay. So if I say console.log hello world, if I go to that directory, my PowerShell. If I go to CS 5610 2014 CD fall, and then go into mean, and then lectures, and then service maker. There's server.js. Yes, right now there's nothing very interesting. I can type server and just says hello world. Right, so it's just basically something that's executable on the desktop. Yes. So we want to make a server out of this, okay, that runs and receives queries, right, through a URL, through some HTTP request from a browser, perhaps. It doesn't have to be from a browser. It could be from anybody, anything that could generate an HTTP request. It could be another Java application or a C# application. Yes, that just, if it knows the URL, it could hit us. Make sense? All right. Let me turn this off. Okay. All right. So one of the libraries, one of the most popular libraries that allows us to create these servers is Express. Right. Node has many libraries, right, to do all sorts of things. Just like Java has libraries and C# has libraries. Well, Node also has libraries. Okay. One of the more popular ones is Express. It is a library that makes it very easy to get a server going. Right. Something. A server that can respond to HTTP requests. Okay? So let's install that. npm install Express, and I'm using an older version. Right, 3xx. Okay, so right now it's downloading and installing Express here. Notice that it created node_modules. That's where it's installing all the libraries that it needs. Right now, I installed it locally on this directory. You could install it globally, right? So that any other project that you make, that you create, you don't have to reinstall Express. You can install it globally so that all projects see the same library. Okay, right now I installed it locally. Just again, I don't want to depend on anything. I want it to be something self-contained, something that I can package it and maybe make it available to you, so you can download it and use it yourself. Yes. If we go into node modules, we'll see that there is a .bin and there's an Express. That's the directory where everything Express got installed. We go to Express. In here, we have a package.json, index.js. So quite a few things in here. If we look at the package, it says what version this is, who the authors are. Okay, there's quite a few things. This is more or less a description of the package, meta information about the package that is used when you deploy, when you publish it, so others can find it. Okay. Let's go back up. Okay, we're still in the server. The server is still not doing anything interesting. It just says hello world. Let's go back and edit it. Okay. What we want to be able to do here is load the Express package from Node. Right, just load it. And the way we load it is by using require and then the name of the package. This is the equivalent of importing, right, or of including, yes, either C# or Java. Right, you import a library. There it is, and it makes it available in the a variable Express. If we don't remember this, you can always find it online. If you go to express.com and you go to the documentations, you can just copy it from here. Right, there it is. We can just copy that. Let's copy that. Right, let's paste it. There it is. So basically, this loads the package. The app equal Express instantiates it. Right, now we have an app object that has a whole bunch of functions in there that would do all sorts of things. One of the things that it could do is register URL patterns that we want to be notified of. Right, if somebody hits us with this URL pattern, I want to do something. Right, what do I want to do? I want to respond with hello world. Yes, or I might go off to a database, right, and do something. Right, I'm on a desktop, right? I'm running on a desktop. Yeah, so I have access to everything that desktop has access to. I have access to the file system. I have access to a database running on that desktop. Yes, I have network connectivity. Right, I could go off and hit anything I want. I don't have the restrictions that a browser would have. Yes, a browser would not be able to hit a database. Right, it would have to go through some kind of middleware. Yes, this is the middleware. This is the middleware that a browser would go through to get to a database. The browser cannot get directly, has to go through a proxy. This is the proxy. okay, that can access databases and networks and whatever we want, file system. And finally, we say, now that we configure what we want to do with Express, we just want to listen on 3000. So listen and .get and .listen are part of the Express API. 2 lines of code, right? And we have a server running. We have a server listening at port 3000, local host, right? Listening at the current IP address, listening for an incoming request. Okay. So I save that. If I go back and run server, it's now listening at 3000. Right? Notice that it didn't come back like it did before, right? It's now blocked, waiting for a query. So we can hit that. You just go to localhost 3000, and it responds with hello world. Everybody okay with that? Right? Right? Everybody good with that? Yes? Okay. Okay. So I want to be able to also host content. Okay? I want this to behave like like any other web server, right? If there are static pages, right, like HTML, I would like to be able to view them. Like if there's an index.html, I like to be able to see it. Right? So to do that, from an Express point of view, from a service point of view, those are all static content, right? All the .css, right? All the .js, all that is all text. Yes, those are all static content, as opposed to what? As opposed to maybe PHP or ASPX or .jsp. Those are dynamic content. Yes, that is going to execute on the server. Yes, and it's going to dynamically generate HTML that comes to us from the server. The server generates dynamic content, as opposed to the .htmls or the .js or the .css. All that is static. When it gets to the browser, then JavaScript can be dynamic, right, and do all sorts of things. Yes, but it reached the browser statically. Yes, when it gets to the browser, then you can do all sorts of for loops and if statements and DOM manipulation. Yes, and all sorts of animation. But once you get to the browser, as opposed to if this is generated dynamically at the server, which is what we're going to do in a couple of weeks when we get to ASPX, or if you're doing JSP, it's the same thing, right? You would dynamically generate the content at the server as opposed to dynamically generating it at the client. Okay? So we want to see static content. We want to be able to access the static content like a normal server, right? Like we would expect from Tomcat, or right, we drop pages and like to be able to see them. We would like our server to serve. So if we look here for static, we can configure Express to serve static content. Right? Here's the snippet of code. I'm going to copy it here. I'm going to replace this because this slash is the root, isn't it? Typically, the root should be mapped to what? Either to a directory listing, right, or to an index.html, typically, right? So I'm gonna blow this away and say, no, I don't want you to send hello world. What I want you to do is I'm configuring the Express, right, to serve static content from this directory, from a public directory rooted at the current directory name. Wherever server.js is running, that's the local directory for the server. Yes, that's what this is. This is underscore dir name. That's the current local directory where I'm running. Yes, and I'm just appending public, meaning there will be some public directory where I'm going to put all my static content in there. Okay, everybody good? All right, I'm going to save that. So I'm going to go back to my directory, right? I'm going to create a public directory. Just like I said here, right? That there's a public directory, and in here, I'm going to put an index page. And I'm going to put some dummy data content in here. I'm just going to say h1 Again, hello world from static content, like HTML. So let's run the server again, and let's try hitting this over here. So if I run it again, it says hello world from static HTML, right? So basically, it's looking for slash. The default behavior is that if you do not provide a document name, a specific document name, it assumes that you want, right, the index.html or the index.jsp or the index.something, right? It's looking for those things. It's looking for one of them. It didn't find anything. I did not provide index.html. This is what it's doing, right? It's going to index.html. That's what it's doing. Okay, so by default, that's the file that it looks up, index.html, right? By default. That make sense? Ever still with me? All right. What other static content would we want in here? Well, we would want, this page is using the default default styling, so that's pretty ugly. So we're going to use we're going to add, like Bootstrap to this, right? Bootstrap is CSS, right? Text is static content. Yes, we're going to put it in here. Typically, you want to put, all your styling, perhaps, everything inside of CSS. We're going to put it in there, right? What other things do we want to host that is also static? JavaScript, right? JavaScript is static, right? From the server's point of view, is static, right? When it gets to the browser, right, it'll dynamically do things to the page, yes? But we're looking from the server's point of view. So I'm going to create a directory here where I'm going to put my JavaScript. There it is. All right, so let's put something in our CSS. I believe I already have in my download, I have Bootstrap. So I'm going to copy from Bootstrap. I'm going to put here, these two here. I'm going to copy it into the CSS file directory. All right, let me see if it's there. There it is. It got copied. Very good. And then I'm going to put Angular in here. So I'm going to download it from online. I'm going to AngularJS, and download. And I'm going to save it to, let's see, Documents, Northeastern, GitHub, 5610, 2004, fall, mean, lectures. There we go. In public, JS. Okay, put it in there. There we go. I saved it. Let's make sure. Yes, there it is. It made it. Okay, we're in there. Okay. So you're in your page. Now you would maybe load it from your page, right? So instead of this hello world, perhaps you might have, HTML. You might have head, and in your head might have a title. The mean stack, right? Mean, if you haven't figured it out, it means M for Mongo, E for Express, A for Angular, and N for Node. Those are the four technologies that we're basically using, yes? Right? And from the client, from the browser, we're going to use Angular. For database, we're using Mongo. For the server, we're using Express running on Node. Yes, it's a very popular stack that is currently very, very popular today for creating single-page applications. Okay, all right. So let's load Bootstrap. So that's will be a link. That's local to me. So it's where? It's at CSS, and Bootstrap is there. CSS, relevant style. There we go. All right. What else should we load in here? We should load also Angular, yes? Let's load Angular. So script, Source is js/angular.min.js. And in our head, we might do, let's see, we need a body. Let's create a body. So body. And in here, we'll have maybe a div with class container. And in here, have h1 hello world. Okay? So let's reload this now. Let's reload this. There it is, hello world. Nicely painted with Bootstrap. Everybody okay? All right. I'm going to give it a title, and this is going to be my service maker, or service client really maker. And it'll come apparent what it does as we progress. Okay. All right. So I want data. So notice that this HTML is now running on the client, on the browser. It needs data. How does it get data? Right? It needs to go back to the server for data. That's the only way that it could get data, right? We already looked at going out to third-party services, right, to get data. The weather service that we used last week or whatnot, yes? We want to go back to our service, our server that is running our database for data, okay? So let's do that. Let's go get data. Let's go get data. Okay, so I need to go back to my server. So here's my server. Here's my server. And I want to ask for, are there any services out there? I want to list them in my page. Right? I want to create all these services. Yes. So let's say that I want to listen in for a request. Get. I want to be able to hit the server with data, right? We did this. How do we do that? Let me show you. Go back to the client for a second. How did we do that? It was something like this, right? We declare this to be ng app. Right? Remember we did that? And then we declare this to be the controller. Didn't we do that? Didn't we do that? We said ng controller. Right? And then we said that this was the oh, did I spell it? ng controller. And this is the service controller. Okay. So I need the code for that, right? If you remember, it looked something like this. Let's put it in a separate script. Instead of, we could have declared it here, yes? But it's usually a better idea to declare it in a separate file, right? Because this could get pretty big, right? So let's call it in a separate file. So I'll call it this JS. I look here in a features folder, right? And the features will be the services feature, and in here there will be the controller.js. Okay. So this is one way to organize your code. This is one particular way. Okay. One way to organize it is that maybe if I have a lot of controllers, I could put it in a controllers directory and put all my controllers in there. Okay. If I have services that go out to the database, maybe I put them in a directory called services. I put all my services in there, right? Another way to organize it is by feature. Okay, I have a lot of features. I have the login feature. I have the registration feature. Yes, I like to be able to get the services. I like to do a lot of things. So each one of these is a feature, and per feature I have a lot of things. I have a controller. I have services, right? I have the view, right? And put everything under a particular directory. You can organize it either way. Okay, I like to organize it this way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here in the public. Instead of public, I'm going to create a directory called features. All the various features in my application, right? And in here, I'm going to create one of the features is that I have a services. And in here, I have, here I will have my controller, my text controller. Okay, and I can load it in. Here I'm going to declare the function that I declared here. What do I call it? Services controller, right? Services controller. So I'm going to declare in the controller, I'm going to say function services. All right, let's see if it works. Console.log hello from services controller. Let's see if that works. So let's see what happens here. Angular loads, the controller loads, and then Angular reads this. Is oh, this is an Angular application. Very good. And this div, everything in this div will be controlled by this services controller. Okay, well, I need to find a function called services controller. Where is that? Oh, it's loaded from here. Let's see. Oh, there it is. That's a function. That's the one I'm going to call. Okay. Actually, this is not just a function. It's a constructor, right? It's a constructor, right? Just like you would have, object orientation in other languages, right? The way you create constructors, this is very similar, right? You instantiate. This is used to instantiate the controller. Okay. All right. Let's run it to see, and let's open up F12 to see if it prints something out. Console. Let's load it. There it is. Hello from services controller. Oh, it's looking for bootstrap.css.map. Let's add it because I hate to have that. Let's add it. Let's go back to public CSS and let me put there the map. Oh, I want to copy. There it is. So there it is. Hello from service controller. Pretty good. Okay. So how did that get called? It got called because index says that this div is being controlled by that controller. Everybody okay? Yes? And it looks for this function. All right. Very good. So I want some data here. So presumably I have some services that that I want to create new service clients, and I want to render them here, right? Where do I get them? I need to get them from somewhere. The controller needs to get them for me. So I have here's a table, right? And the table I'm going to use class table. Oops. And in here I'm going to have, let's see, I'm going to have t head, and in the t head I'm going to have table row. I'm going to have a table head here, and this is going to be the name of my service client. Okay, and then down below I'm going to have table body, and in table body I'm going to have a table row, and this table row I'm going to have a table data where I want to render the name of my service client name. And where I get that is from iterating over service clients, yes, that the Angular is going to give me, right, data, right? So ng repeat service client in service clients. Right, so somebody has to feed that, yes? Where do I get that from? From the controller. The controller is going to give me the data, right? How? Through scope. Remember scope? Right? So what's scope? It's what allows me to bind data models here in JavaScript, bind them to the UI. Right? It allows me to bind those backwards and forwards, right? Whatever happens in the UI, the controller is notified, and whatever the controller happens, right, it pushes it to the client. So they're tied to the scope. Everybody okay? All right, so I can feed stuff in here. So let's feed something really, really simple. Right? Instead of, so here a message, right? I could say message. So how can I feed that in there? from the controller, right? I can do what? I can say scope that message equals hello from controller, right? I can feed data to the UI like that, right? Right. So if I run this, notice it says hello from the controller. There it is. You see that? Right. So whatever I do to the scope on the controller gets fed into the client, whatever data model. Now, the beauty of using Angular is that I am modifying the UI just by using a data model, right? I don't know anything about the classes, about the IDs, whether they're divs or spans. I have no idea what the DOM looks like, right? That is irrelevant from the controller's point of view. The controller should never need to know anything about the UI, right? Only about the data that is being fed to the UI. The UI knows what to do with the UI, right? How to render it using tables, ULs, using whatever. The UI is who's responsible for knowing how to render the data. Okay? The controller only knows how to get the data. All right. Okay, so what else do we want to do here? Anyway, so we want to provide this to the client, this service clients. Right? So let's create a couple of services. Let's go to the controller, and let's create a couple of services. All right. So let's see. Var service 1 here's a service and it has a name, and I have a service that can connect to LinkedIn. That's one of them. Let's create a couple. Just 3. 2, 3. Here I can connect to Rotten Tomatoes. I can connect to IMDb. These are all web services that are out there, yes? And I could create an array of these, right? Var service clients equals an array of service 1, service 2, and service 3. And then I can push it to the client through scope, right? I can say scope.service clients equals to service clients. I can push it, right? What's a UI going to do? It's going to receive it through here. What is it going to do? It's going to say, oh, it changed. I need to update the UI. Yes. So what does it do? It copies and pastes this several times. You know, as long as there are services in this array. For each one of them, it's going to copy and paste this into the DOM 3 times because there are 3. Yes? And so as it's iterating, it's going to bind each instance to this variable name. Yeah? And that variable name, we can then use it to just display each one of the attributes in that object. Right? So let's save that. Let's render this. There they are. We have LinkedIn, Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb. Is everybody okay with this? Did I lose anyone? Yeah. Yes.
In the part where it was giving error for the map.
Yes. Yeah. So what happens is that you see here how we're using min, Angular min, right? Sometimes we would use also bootstrap min. Okay. So when they're minified, if you open them, like the Angular min, it's really gibberish. You can't do anything with that, right? But you still want to be able to debug these things, right? If there's an exception or something that says online whatever, right? How are you going to ever find anything here? Nothing. There's no way, right? So there's a technique that uses the map to be able to map between the minified version, right, and the unminified version, right? So the unminified version is very, very big, right? It has is very nicely written. It has documentation, it has comments, it has a whole bunch of things. The minified version just throws all that away, but you still want to be able to do so. Maps between these two, so you can still debug them. Okay. All right. Okay, is everybody still with me over here? Right. Well, this is kind of lame, right? I have the data in the client side. That's never going to happen. the data is going to come from where? It has to come from a database, right? That's where I want it from, right? So the only way for the browser to hit a database is to go through a server, right? Some kind of middleware. Okay, so let's create a middleware that would allow me to get this from a database, right? So what we're going to do is that instead what we want to be able to do is get all this data from the server, right? We want the server to retrieve that. So if you remember, we want something like this, right? Go off to generate a get. If we're getting something from the browser, we're reading some data, we want to generate a get command method to the server and give it the URL. Where is it? Okay. Okay, service clients. So presumably the server, right, can declare any endpoint, right, any URL from which it can respond with data, right? We're saying here that because the data model, because the entities that we're working with are of type service clients, right? A good practice is to use that entity as the name of the service. If I'm looking for employees, well, it'll be /employees. If I'm looking for accounts, it'll be /accounts. If I'm looking for users, /users. These are entities, right? If I'm looking for, and since I'm not asking for a particular user or a particular employee or a particular, right? I'm not providing the ID. Typically what this is going to return to me is an array of things, right? Array of all the services that are available. Unless you tell me that you want one in particular, right? You have to provide me the ID. Yes? Right, so this is kind of like, get all of them, get all the services, yes? Okay. And then it's gonna notify us if it's successful. It's gonna notify us, and we will render something like render service clients, some function, okay, which we have to write. We don't have it written yet. Okay, everybody okay? Right. All right. So what is this? So we have to have the server be able to respond to these things. Yes. So we don't have that in the server. Well, let's create it. Let's tell the server. Say, hey, server, listen for incoming get requests. Listen in for incoming get requests for this URL. All right, listen, somebody's going to send you a get request. What do I want you to do? This is what I want you to do. Run this method. Run this method. Right? Run this method. Okay. What we want to do is, let's see. We want to pass this data back, right? All this data that is hard-coded in the client, we want it from the server because the server could retrieve it from the database. Yes? Let's send a hard-coded version for now, right? And then we'll put this in the database. All right? Okay, so there it is. I'm gonna cut it from here. I'm gonna put it in the server. So there it is. Service 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And we're gonna respond. We're gonna say with the response, we're gonna say send back JSON this array. The server is going to respond when we hit that query, okay? And the client is going to say, okay, well, I don't have this anymore, right? This would die. This would, right? Where would we do that? In a method, right? Here's the method. Var function. Right? And what are we doing in that method? So what's going to happen here is that HTTP is going to go and hit that service. Yes, it's going to come back with JSON, and if it's successful, it's going to call that function. It's going to pass the data that comes back as a response. Yes, it's going to come back in the response, It's going to call this function. There's the function, right? And it's going to pass it here as the response. There it is, response. And the response, we're going to assign the response to scope.service.clients. That makes sense? Okay. And what's Angular going to do? It says, the array changed, right? I'm going to notify the UI to iterate over the array again, right, and render it. All right, let's see if it works. Let's see if it blows up. Okay, let's stop the server because I just added a new URL. Yes? Let's run it again. Okay, let's go to the client. Let's see if this works. It didn't work. Let's see what's happening here. Let's see if this complained. The server didn't complain. What did this complain? Let's see. HTTP is not defined. Yes, that's right. The service, we declare the scope, but we never declare HTTP. Remember that HTTP is passed in. It's injected, right? It's injected into the function by name. This is a well-known name. $HTTP and $scope are very well-known names in Angular, right? And by name, right, the framework will inject them to us, right, if we use that name, right? It will pass us. These are called services. These are services created by the Angular framework, which we can use internally. Let's try again. Preload this. What it's complaining? Undefined is not a function. Blah blah blah. Controller JS2. JS2 undefined is not a function. Render function, is it this function? Because you can't see this. Let me put it in $scope anyway, because we're gonna be using it later. Let's see. What's not a function? Angular, blah 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 blah. Undefined is not a function. What is not a function? $HTTP get. Is it here? Okay, did the network go out? Network, service clients. Okay, so we are hitting the server, see? We are hitting the server, right? Service clients, right? It is coming back. We're sending this is the URL. There it is, the URL. There it is, right? We can actually type it, right? And we see the JSON that's coming back from the server. We see that the response is actually JSON. There it is. It's the array that's coming back from the server. It's exactly the array that we declared here, right? It's the array that we declared here. We're passing it back. But it's complaining about not finding success. Let me see. Success. Is that how you spell success? Yes, right? That is how you spell success, right? Okay. Render service clients. Did I misspell that? No, that's correct. Scope, blah, 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 equal function. Maybe the order of declaration? Nah, really? Oh, yeah, it was the order of declaration. There it is. Notice that the data now, this data now is coming from the server, right? It's not in the client. But where do we really want it from? We want it from the database, right? We want it from the database. Okay. Well, we don't have yet a way to put data in the database. So let's make a mechanism for us to be able to put data in the database. Let's do that, okay? Let's do that. Really what we want to be able to do from the server is get all this data not hard-coded like this, okay? Right now, let's return just an empty array, right? Let's return an empty array. Because really we want it from the database, right? Let's restart the server and reload the page and notice that it's empty right now. It came back empty from the server, right? If we look at when we look at the request, notice that it comes back with an empty array because that's what we're returning, empty array. right? So let's make a way for us to put data into the database, right? Ever still with me? Did I lose anyone? Please let me know, right? And then we could just backtrack and repeat, right? Okay, so let's make a way to put data into the database. Let's go into the index. Let's go in our table. Right below the label, we're going to put here another row with an input field, right, where we can type the name of these things, and then we can press a button to insert into a database, right, to send the data to a database, right? Okay. Let's do here table row, table data, and then here we want an input field. And the input field is going to be of class, form, control, and it's going to be tied to the controller through this model. It's going to be new or service client dot name. Okay. All right. So let's render that. Let's see how it renders. So there's our input field. There's our input field, right? Maybe we want a button right next to it. With a button that says add. How's that? That's a pretty ugly button. So let's paint it a little bit with a class and say that this is a button and this is a button primary. So at least it has some color. Also, I want to be able to notify the controller when somebody clicks on this button. Yes? So I'm going to say ng click is equal to create. Function called create. Yes? Which doesn't exist in the controller yet, right? We need to declare it. All right, so there it is, right? Notice that there's some styling issues here. That's because the row above us only declared one table head. Let's declare another one. Table head. And in here, let's put a non-breaking space. Non-breaking space. That's better, right? That's a little better. So it's empty, an empty column. Okay, so in the controller, we want to listen in for you clicking on what? Clicking on create. So let's create a function for that. Let's go to the controller. No, that's not it. Where's the controller? There it is. And we're going to say, okay, when you call create this function, what do we want to do? Well, we want to, let's get the object that we would send to the database, right? Where is it? What is it bound to? It's bound to service client. There it is. That's the object, right? Which contains name. It might contain a whole bunch of other things, but for now, just name. Okay, let's keep it simple. Log service client. Okay. Actually, scope service client, right? Scope service client. Let's run this and see if it works. Go to the console. Here's the console down below. Console. So we say service 1 and say add. There it is, right? So that is the object that we want to send to the server to insert into the database. Yes? Okay. How will we do that? Let's see. How do we do that? Well, to do that, again, we would do a $HTTP because we want to generate an HTTP request to the client. Yes? Now, on Monday, we talked about using get, and we use get for everything. And somebody pointed out that that is not appropriate, and that's correct, right? Typically, for you have 4 typical types of commands that you want to be able to do a database, right? The famous CRUD operations, right? You want to create, read, update, and delete, right? And there are 4, just like there are 4 equivalent commands or methods that you can use in HTTP that we can map to these, right? For create, usually we use post, right? For reading, typically we use get, right? For updating, we use put, and for deletion, we use delete, right? So HTTP, the $HTTP service, the Angular HTTP, $HTTP, allows us to not only do a get, like over here, right? Here's the .get, yes, right? It allows us to do also post. It allows us to do put. It allows us to do delete. Okay. we want to send data for a creation, like a create in the CRUD, create. So typically use a post. Use a post. Yes? Everybody okay? All right. So we need to say, well, what URL? What is it that we're creating? We are creating, just like we were getting the services clients, we are creating services clients. Yes? So typically you use the same URL for all three CRUD operations. Okay? But when you're reading them, you do .get service clients. When you're creating them, you do post / service clients. When you're doing a put, you do / service clients. Or when you're doing a delete / service clients. Make sense? All right. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to do a post here. Do post plus the data that I'm going to send. Right? Where's the data? Over here, there's the data. So I'm going to put the data here. There it is. Okay, let's try that. Let's go back to the server. The server can only knows how to handle gets. Right? Up to this point, it only knows how to handle gets. We need to be able to handle posts too. Right? We need to say app, hey server, not only answer to get operations, I want you to answer to post. Right? And it will be the same URL. / service. Wait, was it service? Oh yeah, service clients. There it is. Service clients. Yes. Same function. Request response. Right? And what do we get? The JSON that is coming along? Well, that's what we're sending, right? We're sending a JSON object that contains, the only thing that it contains is the name of the service client, right? That's right. What do we get it from the request? But because it's a post, it's going to be encoded in the body of the HTTP request, right? So we have to extract it from the body. Okay, we need to extract it from the JSON that is coming through, right? Is encoded in the body of the message. Okay, so we can get it. We can say, oops, sorry. We can say var the service, right? We're going to get it from the request, which is encoded in the body. It's in the body, right? We're going to do console.log the service. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry? Request, right? It's coming to us through the request, in the HTTP request, right? We can send back another object, right? We can send it back. Maybe we could do an echo, right, and send back the object that you sent us, right? But it's encoded from, it's coming from, anything that comes from the client for us is a request, including any data, okay? One thing left to do here is that by default, Angular doesn't know how to parse JSON from the body by default. Okay, so it doesn't know how to parse the text inside of the body of an HTTP request. It doesn't know how to convert it into JSON. Okay, we need to turn that feature on. We need to say, go the extra mile, parse the body, and create a JSON object out of it. Right? It's being passed as a string, yes, but parse it into a JSON object. Let's try to do it before doing that, before configuring, see what's happening. All right, so let's stop the server. All right, let's reload. Oops, is this running? Oh, helps if I start the server. There it is. So AAA, and I do an add. Notice what happens to the server here when I click add. When I click add, the server says undefined. So it received the post, right? It received the post, right? It looked at the body. It says, I don't know what's in the body, right? Let's see if we actually did send something. Let's look at the traffic here. The network. There's the post. Here's our post. See that? There's our post. We can look at the header. Right? We can see what we sent in the request headers. Right? We sent. Did we send anything? Yes, we did. Here's the payload. Right? In the body, we did send this string. We did send it. Right? Just the server wasn't able to parse it back into a JSON object. Yes? To be able to do that, let's go back to the Express. Express we can configure Express to do this, to parse the body and extract the JSON out of the body, right? So let's look for body parser. There it is, body parser. Parser. There it is. To be able to turn on this feature, we're just going to copy this line of code, and we're going to paste it in our server. Right? After this use here, I'm going to paste that. Now Express is going to be able to parse that string into an object. Okay? Let's try doing it again. Let's stop our server. Let's run the server again. Oh, there it is. Right? It was buffered. Right? It was still buffered in the. Let's stop the server again. Let's restart it so that we clear the buffer. Okay, there it is. It's listening. Let's try it again. Let's hit it again with our client here. Okay, let's hit it again with A. There it is. The server is receiving the data. It is receiving the data. Everybody okay? So the server is receiving the data. What should it do? It should put it in a database. Let's put it in a database. Let's do that. Stop the server. Okay, so to be able to, just like Express is a very popular library for creating servers, right, and services, right, and creating creating these listeners, right, these handlers, right, we call them routers. They route, right, when a pattern for URL comes in, it routes them to actions. There's many MongoDB libraries that allow you to talk to MongoDB, right? One of the more popular ones is Mongoose. That's one of them, right? There's quite a few, right? There's one that is very close to the way you interact natively with MongoDB, okay? And it's also now it's one that works very well when you post it and host this in OpenShift, okay? The one I'm going to use is MongoJS, but there's a whole bunch of them. There's quite a few, right? If you go to mongo.org, right, and look at the various APIs, it'll list about 5 or 6 that are very popular. One of them is MongoJS, right? So I'm going to load MongoJS, var MongoJS, as a library, require, although I don't believe we've created it, have we? Yeah, we never installed it, did we? Yeah, so we need to install it, right? We need to install it. Right? How do we install libraries? npm, right? npm install MongoJS. So it's going to install MongoJS. Right? This is equivalent in Java, downloading jar files or things like that, right? So there it is. So if we go here, MongoJS, there. Let me run it. Let me. The way this works is that we get a hold of MongoJS, and then we create an instance of DB using MongoJS, the MongoJS API, telling it the name of the database that we want to use. Okay, the name of the database we want to use. Whatever we'll call it. What do you want to call it? 953. Okay, so today is CS 5610. 353, so 353, whatever, all right? The name of the database I want to use for today, okay? And in there, I'm going to have a whole bunch of tables in there. Well, not really, right? It's going to be empty. It's a brand new database. It's empty. But I want to work with certain types of documents, yes, or tables, right? We don't call them tables. We don't call them tables in the NoSQL world, right? We call them collections, yes? We can name them here. One of the tables or collections that I want to work with is a collection called service clients. I want to treat them as if they were a table of service clients, right? A collection of service clients. Each one a record, yes? Okay. Now that I have the DB, and because I use this name, service client, because I gave it the string, because I give it the name of the tables that I want to use, now this DB object, I'm going to be able to access these collections using object-oriented notation through the DB object here. I'm going to be able to say here, post, I want to be able to say db.service clients, right? This maps to, hello, maps to that. It maps to that, right? It's the collections in there. I can have any number of collections. What do I want to do? I want to insert. Why do I want to insert? That service I just got from the body, right? I just got it from the client. I want to put it in the database, right? I can either just put service here, or I could just say your request body in here. There it is. Okay, and then once this is going to be an asynchronous call to the database, says, hey database, insert this into a database, and then notify me when you're done. Right? I don't want to have this thread block waiting for the database to come back. Yes? So this is an asynchronous call. When it's done inserting, it's going to notify us by calling us back in this function. And going to pass us with any errors, right? Any errors that we might have had. And it's going to return to us also the document that actually got inserted, right? Which hopefully will have the same attributes that we pass it. Plus, it's going to have that underscore ID, right? If it made it into a database, right? All right, so what we're going to do is, one thing that we're going to do is that we're going to respond, we're going to send that object back to the client, saying, hey, this is the object that made it into a database, you know, whatever, what do you want to do with it, right? It's made it into a database. All right, so we're going to say response dot JSON, meaning send back as JSON the following document. Okay, just send it back, right? Meanwhile, in the client, in the controller, we posted this, right? We posted it. We're going to say a success, meaning we want to be notified if it's successful. If it's successful, what do I want to do? What would I want to do? I would like to render the clients, right? I want to don't I have a service that gets it somewhere? Where did I put it? Oh, there it is, the get, right? I want to use this guy here. You know, get them again. You know, read them again from the client. All the services. For now, we're just going to say hello. We're just going to say function response comes back. We're just going to do console.log the response. We're just going to log to the console of the browser. We're going to log whatever comes back from the database. Yes? All right, let's do that. So let me restart the server. Okay, and we're going to insert something here. What's this complaining about here? Wait. Post. Wait, what? Oh, okay, that was before. So I'm going to post AAA and post it. And it didn't come back. What happened here? Did it complain? What happened? Oh, you know what? We never started MongoDB. Let's start the server, the MongoDB database. Let's start that. Yes? That would help. MongoDB. I remember we talked about how to install MongoDB, right, previously, right? You download it, you run the installer, right, and it'll install in program files. And the only thing that you need to remember is to create a directory at the root, at C, create /db/data, okay? And that's where it's going to store all its data by default. You know, you configure it to store the data elsewhere, right? And it says, no, store it under this other directory, right? You know, keep it all in the same place. Yes. Right now, I'm just using the default place where it's storing all its data. Okay. All right. Let's try it again. There it is. So it came back now from the database, right? And it's echoing what I sent it, right? This is the echo that is coming back from here, right, from the server. Right, we're sending back the document that got inserted into the database, right? There it is, AAA. I could try others, BBB. There it is. So each one with its individual ID. You see that, right? So what we want to be able to do is notice that it's not listing here. Why is it not listing, right? Well, one thing that we could do is well, I've inserted all these things. Get the latest lists of applications or service clients, right? And list them, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. I believe we have that in the server already. What do we want in the server? We can remember we're sending an empty array, right? We want to go back to the server and say, hey, server, what are all the service clients that you have in the database, right? Because I've just inserted one. I don't have them all. Can you give me all the service clients? So what we could do is, again, go to the database, service clients, .find. So find is going to retrieve all the service clients, all of them, right? And it's going to notify me. Again, this is all asynchronous, right? It's going to go off to the database. It's going to take a couple milliseconds, but we're not going to block for it. At some point, it's going to come back and notifies us by calling this function with either an error or the documents. I'm going to put plural there because it's coming back with documents. And what we're going to do is we're going to respond to the client which is waiting for us, right? Well, actually not waiting for us, but right, it has a callback waiting for us, right? We'll notify the client. They're going to say response.send JSON these docs, all the documents. Yes. Okay. So let's do that. If we refresh. If we restart the server, right, and we refresh this, notice that we have A and B there. You see that? A, B, B, B. Those are the ones that we inserted earlier, isn't it? Aren't they? Right? If we insert CCC and we say add, notice that it gets inserted, but my UI is not being updated. See that? Right? If I refresh, it'll get it, right? But I don't want to refresh, right? I don't want to go back to the old ways of developing applications where you need to refresh the entire page. I mean, that's lame, right? We want to be able to, in the background, get a hold of these, right? What we could do is cache all this, right, as we add. And I know we added it. We have the object in the client, right? We could update the array, right? We could insert in the array, but somehow we have to make sure that, well, did it actually make it into the database? Right. If it did make it into a database, yes, I want to update my array. I need to maintain synchronicity between the array that I have in the client and what it's actually in the database, right? The safest way is to go get it from the database again, right? Make sure that I am always showing only what's in the database, right? It's a little slower because I need to go get it again, but it's a surefire thing that I know that this is exactly what's in the database, right? I could use some more clever ways to synchronize the database, but I'm not as clever. So I'm just going to go out and get everything from the database again. Is that okay? All right. So let's go back to our server. Is okay. It's done, right? We can put stuff in there and we can get all of them. That's all really we need, right? We need to go back to our client and see. Back to our controller and see what we're doing here. Let's see. So this get over here, this is how it's being refreshed, right? When I refresh the page, this is how it's being rendered because I do an explicit get. Yes? But instead of doing an explicit get, what I want to be able to do is do a programmatic get, right? I want to do it on demand as opposed to hard-coded here, right? I want to be able to call this anytime I need. Right? Instead of just being hard-coded like this. So I'm going to put it inside of a function. Okay? So what I'm going to do, right, is put this in a function and say it's going to be scope get I'm going to call this all, a function called all, meaning get all of them, right? I'm going to put this in a function that I can call on demand. I can call it whenever I want, right? And what's it going to do? It's going to call render clients. So over here in the create, instead of just printing out the response, what could I do? I could call $scope all. So that's going to go back to the database again, retrieve everything, right, and update my data, my UI. Also, I want to do at least at the beginning, right? When I first get loaded, when the page first is drawn, I want to at least call scope all that first time, right? So that my UI shows what's already there, right? Okay, so let's go back here and I'll refresh. If I say DDD and say add, there it is, DDD, right? Because it's coming back. Notice that there's quite a few chatter here, right? There's a post, the first post that allows us to add DDD, and then there's another get, right? When the post comes back, it generates another get. You know, get me all of them in a response with all 4 elements. That makes sense, right? What about deletion? Let's add delete for each one of these. The server doesn't know how to delete, so I'm going to have to add that to the server, right? Meaning if I receive a delete, if somebody sends me an HTTP delete command, right? I want to delete that service client. Right? But I don't want to remove all of them. Which one do I want to remove? You need to tell me which one, yes? Right? So this needs to be a little, it needs to be parameterized, right? You need to tell me which one, right? So one common way to tell you about a specific entity, about a particular record, right, is to encode it in the URL. Right? So notice that this URL is different from all the other URLs, that it has 2 parts, right? The first one is static, right? The second part is dynamic, yes? And meaning we're not looking for the string ID, right? We're looking for a value, some value, right? And that's what this colon says, right? I want you to look for some value. It doesn't have to be literally ID, right? It could be whatever value. And that I want you to bind it to some variable ID and make it available to me. So parse it out. Parse it out and make it part of the parameters that I can retrieve. So in function, I can do the request. This is the request. So put it in the request object so I can retrieve it from the parameters in the request object. Okay, so I can get the ID. Let's do from the params var ID is equal to request params.id. Okay, or I can use this, right? They're interchangeable. ID, the same thing, right? It's a map, right? But in JavaScript, you can use the dot notation, right? Or the square bracket notation. They're equivalent. Okay, right. So I'm going to use. I prefer this notation whenever possible. I use this notation. Okay, and I'm going to do console log ID. Okay. Let's look at the client. How do we invoke this delete from the client? Go back to the client. First of all, we need a delete object with a delete button on the UI. Yes. Let's add let's go back to the index.html, and as we render the names of the service clients, I also want to render another column next to it. I want to put a button here. All right, I'm going to put here remove or delete. Remove. If we go to the client and we refresh, now we have those ugly remove buttons. Right, let's paint them. We'll say class btn danger. That's in red. Other red, right? Careful. And then I also want to notify the controller that they've clicked this remove button. Yes? Let's say ng click remove. Okay? And I need to tell it, well, what do you want to remove? Right? I need to pass it the ID of the object that I am removing. Yes? Where is that? It's in the service client. Oops. What did I do? Service client, yeah. And then dot, where's the ID? Remember, these are objects that are coming from the database, right? That we're rendering, yes? So not only are the names in there, the ID, the underscore IDs are in there too, right? Which I haven't used anywhere, right? Well, I'm going to use it now, underscore ID. I'm going to pass it the ID of what I want to remove. I don't know what the ID is. I don't care. Right? These are opaque to me, yes? Well, no, they're not me. I could print them out. So I'm passing the ID. So the controller is going to receive this. Right? It's going to receive this. It says scope dot remove. Did I call remove or delete? Remove, right? I'm going to say remove is going to be a function. Going to be a function that receives the ID, and I want to do a $HTTP colon send a delete command, right? And then do an HTTP delete, right, to the server, right, with the URL, same URL that I've been using so far, services client, that I've used everywhere, but it's expecting also the ID concatenated to this, right? So I'm going to pass the ID here. Do that. And the server, I forget, is the server ready? Yes, the server is ready to receive it, and it's just going to parse out the ID and just going to print it. That's all it's going to do for now. So let's stop the server and let's run it again. Okay, let's go back to our client and let's refresh. And I'm going to click on remove. There it is. It's getting the IDs. See, the server is receiving the ID, right? If I click on this one, it will receive 12. If I click this, is 80. That one over here, or 81. You're getting all those. Everybody okay? So let's do the actual remove. Let's do the actual remove. Let's go here. So delete, what it should do is do basically do a db dot service clients dot remove and pass a filter on what is it that we want to remove, right? I want to filter by the field ID, whose value is MongoJS.objects ID. Meaning that string that comes in, that long number, convert it into a MongoJS object ID, right? And then compare it against the underscore ID of all the records, right? The lucky one is going to be removed, right? And then finally, we can then give it a function by which we're going to be notified if there were any errors and any data that comes back. I believe it's the number of records that were affected, right? Any number of records that were removed, it'll come back in this document. We'll respond, send back the response, that doc that came back from the database. We're going to send it back. So the controller is going to receive it where? It's going to receive it in a success, right? If the removal was successful, what should the controller do? It should update the UI, right? It should update the UI. How do we do it earlier? We went back and got it again from the server. Right? It's a little slow and inefficient, right? But we're guaranteed that we're always showing what the database is in the database, right? Obviously, if this were tons of information of data, we would need pagination, right? Maybe get 10 at a time. We would know what page you're in. Probably we're using some cache mechanism, right? where we would have a local copy of the data, and we would make sure that we would always maintain synchronicity. Okay. Anyway, so here's success. So what are we going to do? We're going to do the same thing we did for the post. I'm just going to copy that here. Okay, I'm going to paste it here. There it is, right? The scope all. So let's look at that. Let's restart the server. Set the server. Let's go to the client. Let's refresh the client as well. And let's remove A. Notice that A is gone, right? I don't have A. I don't have, maybe I'll remove D. Now I just have B, 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 and C, C, C. Okay, make sense? Everybody good? Okay. All right, what's left? Well, the only thing left to do is, what about updates? Right? I want to be able to update a particular one. Yeah, your question? So let's do that. Let's update one of these guys. Before I get into that, services, I'm doing something that is not appropriate. Okay. One of the things is that here's a controller. There's a controller, right? And the controller is directly accessing HTTP calls. Okay. The controller should not be doing this. The controller should be, just minding and making sure that the data model is good, right? And talking to the UI and making sure that I'm updating the UI, right? Ideally, what all these HTTP calls, right? Ideally, they would live in a separate service, okay? But if we have time, we'll move it there, okay? If we have time, we'll move it there. But this one too, right? And all the deletes, anything that is talking HTTP, right? Anything talking to the backend layer, right? Should be put all in one single service, right? We'll do that if we have time. Let's do the update. Okay, let's do the update. Yes.
As far as this controller is concerned, this is acting as the connecting source between the HTML page and the NodeJS server.
Yes.
Whereas server is acting as a connecting
to the database. Yes.
For the controller.
Yes. Yes. Right. So you have the page which is hosting the controller, right, and hosting the services on the browser side, right, and sending HTTP requests, right, to Node, right, Node.js. Node.js is being invoked with these either delete, post, get, put, right, with the correct URL, right, and then that is in turn proxying these commands to the database, right? It says, oh, you're posting, oh, you want to create, you want to insert, right? Oh, you're deleting, oh, you said you want to remove things from the database, yes, right? Yes. So we have to keep two services alive, like NodeJS and the MongoDB.
Yes,
exactly, right. Yep.
So like there will be two servers hosted and the.
Yep, exactly. We did that yesterday, right? I mean Monday. We had Node.js cartridge, and we have the MongoDB cartridge running at the same time, right? We also had Mongo Rock that allowed us a client to see the database, right? Here we're not using a client. The client that we would use here would be the Mongo client, the default Mongo client from the command line, right? We could say, if we start another one, we could run Mongo, right? And here, you can look at the database. Here's the database we just created today. There it is, right? And we can then show collections. And we have the service clients. There it is, right? And then we can say db.service_clients. Clients that find, very much like we do in MongoJS, right? There's the two that survived. The last two that survived, there they are, right? BBB and CCC, right? If I insert here QQQ, add, gets added to the UI and also the database, right? We can do find, there they are, right? All three are there, right? And as I remove, if I remove B, right, the database is also being updated, yes? Right? No magic here, right? Everything is working. Notice that it's JavaScript all the way through, right? JavaScript on the client, JavaScript on the middleware, on the server, right, and JavaScript on the database. It looks like JavaScript is like taking over the world here, right? It's like making its way into everything. I guess very much like XML did for a while. Right? XML looks like everything was XML. Anyway, right. So we were going to do put. Right? We're going to do put. So let's do put. So we have here. We want to be able to select a particular element, right? So we want to be able to not only remove, we would like to be able to select that particular element and edit it, right? So we're going to put a button here, button ng click, and we want to say, we want to call select, and we want to select, we want to retrieve the object. Let's retrieve the object. That's interesting too, which we haven't looked at yet, right? So, and the class will be the same class as before, button warning, and this will be select. Okay. If you look at the service client, if we load it again, there's select, right? What select is going to do is going to go off to the database, right? Retrieve that one element. Retrieve that one single element, right, and then put it in some kind of editor, where we can edit it. Okay. All right. So what's this? What time is it? Oh man, 9 more minutes. All right. Let's see. So select is going to be invoking the controller. What select service, right? Select service client, going to pass the ID. So we need in the controller a selector here, right? We need a selector here. We need, say, scope.select equal function, and then the ID of the element that we are selecting. Yes? Okay. And so we can show here. We can do console. Let's see if we get the console.log ID. Let's see if that works. Let's look at the console. Where are you, console? Right, if we select that one, there's the ID. There it is, right? We have to select the ID. There it is. So now that we have the ID, what we want to be able to do is do a get, just like we did this get over here. We did a get before, didn't we? But this time, we're going to get not all of them. We want to retrieve just one of them, right? We're going to say get the same URL, service clients / ID. So we're going to pass the ID of the object we want, right? Of the object we want. In the server, we need to be able to respond to this URL, this brand new URL. It's going to look very much like this delete URL, yes? That has an ID at the bottom, at the end, right? But it's not going to be a delete. It's going to be a get. It's going to be a get, right? The URL, and that ends with ID. We're going to get a hold of the ID, just like we did here. Let's see if that works. If that works. Let's restart the server. This is the server. Let's restart it. Okay. Let's have it side by side, and let's click on some of these. So if I select, it didn't get it. Reload this. I did restart the server, didn't I? Select. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. If I select, so the server is receiving that ID, right? So the server has the IDs. What do we need to do? We need to find that particular object. We need to find that particular object using MongoJS db.serviceClients.findOne, right? We only want one of them, and we're going to pass a filter, right? Which one do we want? The one that has the ID, the underscore ID, equal to the ID that we're passing as an argument. Yes, there it is, right? And once you find it, notify us with the document that you find. hopefully it's the it's that object, right? And we're going to send it back as a response. JSON, we're going to pass the document back. Yes, right? And the client needs to receive it, right? Needs to receive it. So here, when it does the get, it's going to do a success, right? If it's successful, it's going to receive a response. The object that I retrieve from the database, that one object, we do console.log the response. Yes? Let's try that. Let's stop this. Let's reload. And here's the client. I'm going to refresh. And let's look at the chatter here in the network. Let's make this a little smaller. So let's clear this. So I'm going to get that. There it is. So I hit it. Let's see. There it came back with C. There it is. See that with that ID? You do that one. Here's another one, right? QQQ. It should be printing out to the console. There it is. It's printing out to the console. What do we really want to do? We want to set this one over here, right? We'll set it over here. So what we're going to do here is in the client, it's called what? What's the model for that? The model is called, I believe, service client, just service client, right? Service client. So we're going to do in the controller, we're going to do basically, we're going to say scope service client is equal to the response. Right? So let's refresh that. So if we select this, notice that it changes to C, right? Obviously, right now we only just have the name, but imagine that this were pretty complex document, right, with name, IDs, dates, and all sorts of things, right? Right, we're updating the editor. Now the editor needs to be able to update. Okay, I got 4 minutes. So let's add in the UI. Let's add another button. What happened? What'd I do? Oh crap! Ah, go away. Oh. Forget it. I'll just go here. Can I just close it somewhere? Okay. I'll add another button here. Right? Not add. I'm going to say like an update. How's that? An update. Update. Yes. Update. I notice that the object is not only going to have the name, right? It's going to have its underscore ID associated, right? It remembers, right, that it has all the attributes. We're only rendering the name, right? But we have all the data for that one, right? So in the update, we know exactly the one we want to update. Where did all my files go? Oh, did I do this? Is that what I did? Okay. Right. So in my controller, I'm going to listen in for that update. Yes. Why is this not scope? Scope.update can be a function. I must have a closed parenthesis somewhere, not right. I want to print out. I'm going to do console.log this one, right? That's what I want to see if it changed, right? That's what I want to see if it changed. Let me see if it works. Let's select CCC, right? And I want to change it to CCC 111 update. Undefined. Did I miss something? Where? Oh, client. Oh, sorry. Let's refresh that. Let's select. This is 111. It's a update. There it is. So I was able to change it locally in the client. I have to push it back to the server, right? To a database to change it in the database, right? So let's push it to a database, right? So I have it. I'm going to do an http.put, because that's what we do when we want to change something. Same URL, but I want the ID, right? Where do I get the ID? It's from the scope client, right? Dot underscore ID. That's the ID, right? plus the data, the new data. It's these $ scope service, right? That's what we're going to send over. The server needs to be able to answer for that. So it's going to the server and listen for those puts. And the put is going to be very similar to this get, right? So I'm going to copy it. But instead of listening for a get, it's going to be listening for a put, same ID. And it's going to receive the new object. It's going to do console.log. It's going to parse it from where? From the body, right? Just like we did for the create. From the body. It's in the body, right? So let's try that. Let's restart the server. Okay. Here's a client. Let me refresh. So select 111. Update. There it is. It received it. There's the new name, CCC 1111, right? So we need to update the way we update. I gotta go. In the server, what we need to do is find first, db.service-clients.find and modify, right? And we find it by the same filter here, the same filter, right? We're going to set. Is there a comma? Yeah, comma. So set the field that we want to change, right? All the fields. Well, in this case, it's just name equal to request.body.name. And finally, the function by which is going to reply to us with the errors and the documents. We're missing something here. Here's the ID. That's this. We're missing something here. Set. I think it's like that. Function. That. What am I missing? So that's this. That closes with this. Here's a function. Here's the ID, the filter. Here's the set. Oh, maybe I don't need this. Set. And then the function. What? Did you see an error message here? I don't see it. Syntax error. That's the ID. Here's the set. Oh, does this needs to be an object? Does that need to be an object? Okay, I think I fixed it. Okay. And finally, do response.json document. Okay, I need to go. I'm going to get yelled at. All right, I'm going to put this in GitHub so that it'll give you a starting place. Okay, I hope this helped. Again, I'm going to be here till 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight. If you have any questions, please come see me. All right, thank you.